There's Anusha.
Yeah, hello.
Hi. So we're just waiting for a few more people to join since we had the technical difficulties, but hi, Anusha.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Rob. I'm repeating myself.
Yeah.
Got some put the information on the Etherpad so we see people managing very intelligently to figure out how to join the side channel here. Just thanks everybody for your patience dealing with these challenges.
No worries, okay.
Gautam will start us off in a minute. And maybe one of the first things we want to do, Gautam, is figure out what our time window is.
Yes, so we have until the hour. So let's get started. And I'll just keep trying to admit folks into this room. And you can unmute yourself if you'd like to talk, or you can use the raise hand feature. But let's just get started with the really quickly with introducing the session, who's going to be talking and such. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining from. And thank you so much for joining. As I said earlier, I apologize for the tech troubles that we're having. But what is a tech conference without tech troubles? So the session we have today is a discussion on OpenStack storage for containers. And specifically, we'd like to talk to operators and all users, folks that are trying to run container orchestration systems on top of OpenStack, or otherwise, right? Whether you're doing this with OpenStack, as your as the cloud that you're running on, or using OpenStack components in some way for your container workloads. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce our main speaker for today. It's going to be Tom Barron, but we have a plethora um, of experts in this field, especially maintainers from the manila-csi, the cinder-csi, and ember-csi, three projects that provide storage to OpenStack-based solutions. So, Tom, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So one of the things we thought we'd do to start off the discussion used to be the Manila PTL. Gautam is now, and I've worked very recently with helping integrate Robert Bashik, who you'll meet in a bit, manila-csi and OpenShift, with Mike Fidosen, who you'll meet, who's wrote the operator for it and so on. But one of the things we thought we'd do starting off here is we want to understand the use cases people have. And I've made a little typology that may or may not be appropriate. So you can attack the or criticize or suggest changes to the typology. But I'm interested in how people are using or envision using containers with OpenStack. And I have really four different kinds of use cases in mind that emerge from us at apparently my camera is too high. Emerge from us working on storage for containers at Red Hat. And one of them is that you run Kubernetes on top of OpenStack with trusted tenants. And what I mean by trusted tenants is you they can have special privileges that a regular user can't have. So an example would be that they run Ceph clients and VMs. Or an example would be that they have privileges such that they can create provider networks rather than just normal self-service networks. But it's best understood really in opposition to scenario B, which is where an untrusted tenant, an ordinary user of OpenStack, for people that work with OpenStack regularly, I would say like someone with a member role in a Keystone project without any special privileges more than that, runs Kubernetes on top of OpenStack. So in this case, the administrator doesn't have to know anything or do anything special in order to enable the tenant to run Kubernetes. Another model that has been discussed quite a bit in the past is you throw away Keystone altogether and you run Kubernetes on top of OpenStack with no auth mode or whatever. Stand up the infrastructure for a single Kubernetes instance running on it that's dedicated to it. And then finally, there's the idea of inverting it all together and running OpenStack on top of Kubernetes. Now that can be either just deploying it with Kubernetes or having some ongoing Kubernetes cloud that is running one or more OpenStacks on top of it. Now, connected with this, as you play through there, is the cardinality of what you're doing. And in scenario A or B, you can have many Kubernetes clusters on top of OpenStack. But in A, where you're running with trusted tenants, you're likely to have fewer, shall we say, or conceivably because there's more coordination between the Kubernetes administrator and the OpenStack administrator. In the extreme case, the Kubernetes administrator and the OpenStack administrator are the same person or same organization, right? But they're sharing information beyond the OpenStack APIs, or they're relying on administrative APIs to introspect the OpenStack infrastructure and use it. And then tied into this is the idea of the deployment strategy, which I've already kind of went into in a way, which is, does the OpenStack administrator deploy Kubernetes, or are there users possibly totally unknown to the OpenStack administrator except for their ID who are deploying Kubernetes? Do you have hundreds of clusters on there like you might on AWS and GCP? Where you could run OpenShift or Rancher or kubeadm yourself, and the OpenStack administrator doesn't know anything about it? Or is there tight coordination and coupling between, an out-of-band communication between the OSP admin and the Kubernetes admin? We slipped and said OCP there because that's a Red Hat trade name. We should say KAS. admin. So I'm interested in what the people here, other than me, are interested in this. I'm most interested in scenario B and developing for scenario B, and tied in with that really is if you do have storage for Kubernetes, are you getting it from OpenStack, which we're going to talk about with Anusha and Robert and Mike, where they use cloud provider. Are you getting it? Gorka, for instance, will use with Ember. We'll use OpenStack technology, but you're not really using cloud provider OpenStack to get it from the OpenStack cloud itself. So anybody have thoughts on this? Please, this is a forum. It's supposed to not be a presentation, but a discussion. So anybody want to talk to any of these issues? who here is deploying Kubernetes in combination with OpenStack in some fashion today? Hey, Mark. Who was talking? I'm sorry.
Hello? Yes, I'm Martin. Currently on my company, we are using a demo of Rancher cluster at the top of OpenStack for provisioning the storage. We have some troubles integrating because the plugin in Rancher that talks with Cinder was not ready yet. Trying to do a integration directly using Docker didn't work since the Cinder multi-attaching feature does multi-volume attaching, I guess. Attach the same volume to this thing to more than one instance. It wasn't working too. So we are trying to addressing that. I'm not sure if there is something a better solution for this. Currently, the main problem we have is we need storage, balanced storage between servers.
So Martin, are you using an Infra Kubernetes sender provider, or are you using an external one? And if the latter, are you using cinder-csi? Which cinder provider or plugin are you using?
We are using currently the Rancher plugin for Cinder to do the connection with the Kubernetes.
I'm a little bit ignorant. Is the Rancher Cinder plugin I'm familiar with the entry code in Kubernetes itself. And then I'm most familiar with otherwise with what Anusha can tell us a lot about, which would be the cinder-csi plugin. Do you know if the Rancher code derives from either of these?
I'm not sure. I'm not really sure.
Anusha, would you say hi to people and introduce yourself? Because Martin, and also if you know what's used with Rancher.
Hi, Tom. Hi. Yeah, but I'm not sure that Rancher uses which plugin, cinder-csi, or I'm not sure either.
So Anusha, you would be more qualified than me to explain to people the difference between the entry code and the CSI plugin. This is an important thing for people to understand.
Okay, yeah, sure. So initially, when initial plugins like when Kubernetes, there's all the cloud providers reside inside the Kubernetes code. So all the cloud providers, whether it's OpenStack, AWS, all are part of the Kubernetes code and shipped via Kubernetes. Along with the Kubernetes code. So that approach is called as entry provisioner. So anybody using the provisioner which is built inside the Kubernetes code, so they are using entry provisioners. So those are kind of deprecated. So right now, those code is moved out of the repo and hosted as a external plugins. So they are connected via an interface that is exposed by the cloud provider. So right now there is a proposal to be removed all the entry provisioners by 1.20, and everyone should move to the external provisioners. So we already have the flags in place, CSI migration, which they can enable to do the seamless migration from in-tree to out-of-tree providers. So that is should be pretty stable by now. So if anyone face issues, so the feedback is welcome on that if anybody using on that.
Thank you, Anusha. So Martin, one of the things to figure out here is kind of homework, as it were, is to figure out where the Rancher cinder-csi still fits into
Okay,
this.
got it. Thank you.
Into this landscape that Anusha's spelled out. And
One
then,
thing you can check is the provisioner. So is it kubernetes.io/cinder, or it is cinder.csi.openstack.org. So you can check that provisioner. So if it is under kubernetes.io, so
and we can
Thank
use
you.
this Etherpad after the session to follow up with people if you leave contact information. So if you have questions, we can, one of the points of a forum is people learn who each other are and learn how to get help and who to talk to. So Martin, if you would leave your information, we will follow up with you on this. It sounds to me though, are you planning on running multiple Kubernetes clusters on top of OpenStack? Would you get all this working?
Yes, currently we have a PLC running, but it's not for production yet, or at least it's not put in production. So it's more than experimental thing.
Okay. And Sven, I notice, wrote here that he's using Magnum with OpenStack storage with Manila and cinder-csi. So Sven, I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, you're any regular user can run Magnum. By a regular user, I just mean with default privileges and avail themselves of the storage involved that they need to fulfill PBs, fulfill PBCs. Not everyone can talk, so feel free to just put notes in the Etherpad too. So we have, what, about 10 minutes left, Gautam?
Yes, we do, but we can continue to take questions, I think. Since this is a private Zoom channel, it's not going to end. So I think
Sure.
there are folks still coming in, so we'll try to take questions and set context.
Okay, I'm thinking that some people may be committed to the original schedule, so we should make sure, and we can come back to any questions or some of these issues, but I'd like to make sure that we introduced Anusha, if she wants to say anything more, but she's the main person for the cinder-csi work. We'd like to introduce Robert from manila-csi and Mike Fidosen, who is working both on Manila and cinder-csi operators in OpenShift. And have for the hour. And then, as you say, we can continue if anyone's interested with questions and stuff. So Robert, would you introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about where manila-csi is going?
Sure. Okay, so I'm working on, as Tom said, manila-csi. It's housed inside the same repository as cinder-csi, so that's, I think it's in, the link is in Etherpad, Kubernetes, github.com/kubernetes/cloud-provider-OpenStack. We have few planned features for the next few releases. Here I'd like to talk about three most prominent ones. Those are multi-protocol support. Then we have high availability. And the last one, at least for this session, would be online volume expansion. So just as a very brief introduction for those of you who are not yet familiar with manila-csi, it's a CSI compliant storage driver for the OpenStack Manila service. And this basically means that you can deploy this driver, manila-csi, in a container orchestrator that understands CSI. So it's, for example, Kubernetes or its distributions like OpenStack, but there are some others as well, like Mesos, Docker Swarm. I'm not sure what the state of CSI support in these is though. But anyway, manila-csi lets you interact with storage managed by the Manila service, like you would normally do with any other storage kind. So, you know, in case of Kubernetes, would be getting PVCs, mounting them to pods, and things of this nature. So basically, you know, just it lets you expose Manila storage resources to your container, to your container orchestrator. Sorry. So yeah, let's start with the first topic in the agenda. So that's the multi-protocol support. Currently, we are offering NFS and native CFS, SFFS share protocols. And what this looks like from the deployment side of things is that you would have separate instances of the driver for each of those share protocols. So for example, let's say you offer your users both NFS and SFFS shares. Driver one for NFS and the other for SFFS. As you can see, this is cumbersome to maintain, and ultimately just adds more moving parts that could potentially break. So this is part of the motivation behind the upcoming multi-protocol support, where a single Manila CSI instance is able to accommodate more than one share protocol. We already have some work in progress implementation of this, and Tom, Gautam, and I are currently working on an upgrade plan that should specify how users should migrate from the the older version where there are multiple drivers serving separate share protocols, and how they should upgrade to this single driver multi-protocol setup. Okay, so another point in the agenda is high availability, and that's high availability of the control plane of manila-csi. This feature is pretty orchestrator specific because it very much depends on how each of the components of the driver is deployed within the cluster. So for now, we are considering Kubernetes and here the deployment is based on a stateful set. We'll be moving to deployment with some number of replicas. This is, of course, up to the user or administrator how many replicas they are going to deploy. And those replicas will work in an active passive mode. So there will be some leader election going on, and in case the current leader becomes unresponsive or fails for whatever reason, a new leader will be elected. Okay, so and the last part of the roadmap is online volume expansion, as it's called in CSI, or simply share expansion in Manila terminology. The fact that we are working with shared file systems as opposed to raw block devices makes it a lot easier when it comes to resizing volumes, because basically we are Manila service is doing all the heavy lifting. So this feature will basically allow users to expand existing volumes online without any downtime. Okay, so that's it from me for the roadmap for manila-csi. If you have any questions.
So thank you, Robert. Would you put in there perhaps in the Etherpad reference for how to raise issues on and get in touch with us in upstream cloud provider OpenStack for manila-csi.
Absolutely.
I'm glad people know who you are now. He's the genius behind manila-csi. I'm teasing him, but Anusha, you talked a little bit about the migration, which is really probably the biggest deal for cinder-csi, but do you want to share roadmap information or anything with us for cinder-csi?
Yeah, sure. Just a second. Yeah, so with the cinder-csi, for the current status, you can say that we already have the pretty good features supported as part of the driver, like raw block volume topology expansion, where both online and offline are supported, and snapshotting, inline volume cloning, and recently we have added that multi-attach, where it just you can just avail with the cinder multi-attach volume type, which cinder supports. So that is the current status of the driver. So which some of the ongoing and planned features, right now we are focusing more on the fixing issues in stability and increased test coverage, what for all the features that are being supported in the driver. Apart from that, we do have plans to move CSI migration to GA, that is stable, which means it will be enabled by default. So this is for all the users who are using entry provisioner. So those calls will be automatically redirected to cinder-csi, the external driver. So I don't think there will be it will be a seamless, if you right now also it should work, but you before enabling this flag. So we do have plans for this to GA, but it might take a release or two to get this done. One more we have on mind is that make the driver in conformance with 1.3.0 spec, which right now it is in conformance with 1.2.0. So this is one more item we would might take up in a couple of releases. So apart from this, so if anyone have any feature requirements, so they could post it on the repo Kubernetes. So I will just paste the link on the Etherpad. So we could discuss there, and also we can take it up.
Excellent. Thank you, Anusha. We're really out of time officially, but we're going to stay around for a little bit for anybody who's interested in continuing the discussion. Before we end the first part here, the official part of the meeting, Gorka, would you introduce yourself and put a link on ember-csi? I'm sorry we didn't have much time to talk about it, but also we have a talk tomorrow that Gorka and Eric Harney and Feda on the various CSIs in which Ember is featured quite prominently. Gorka, would you say hi to people quickly?
Hi, I'm Gorka, and I've been working on ember-csi, which is unlike cinder-csi and manila-csi. It's not meant to be run when you're running Kubernetes on OpenStack. It's primarily for any other case. And what we are doing is just ripping off everything from Cinder, the scheduler, the manager, the API. So we don't use RabbitMQ, we don't use MySQL, we don't use anything like that. And we just use the Cinder driver code And since it's Python, we just dynamically import it. And for the metadata needed to be stored, we store it in Kubernetes and as CRDs. And we support basically all the features in 1.1. The only limitation is that, just like cinder-csi, we are using block volume in a file system mode, a volume with a file system. You can do multi-attach. You cannot do it because how we are making available a file system is attaching a volume and formatting and mounting it. So multi-attach is not actually supported, but for block volume it is, and we support all the other features, topology expansion, snapshot cloning, and everything. And we have a nice operator for if you're using OpenShift, which allows you to configure the driver using a form with helps and with help for the different fields that you need to fill in, which is something that usually Cinder has a problem with. People come to Cinder, see the configuration file, they see that there are a lot of configuration options, and they don't know which ones are relevant for a specific driver. With this operator, we don't have that problem. You select the driver from a dropdown, and then only the specific configuration options relevant for that driver are presented on the form. And well, in terms of future work, we want to do seamless upgrades between the different releases because we are based on OpenStack releases. After all, we're using the same drivers. So we will have to do the upgrading to get the latest drivers. And in terms of productization for Red Hat, we are giving in the finishing touches to the whole driver certification, the documentation, and everything. So if you're a vendor that has a driver in OpenStack and could be interested in having a CSI plugin for free, basically, come to our IRC channel or send us an email or anything. I think that's basically it.
Gorka, thank you. And if you would also put info on the Etherpad about for people who are interested in Ember, how to get in touch with the developers who work there, raise issues, and that would be wonderful. And be sure and look for the talk tomorrow. If you look for Gorka's name, you will see it. We're going to close the recorded part of this session in a moment, but before we do, I also want to introduce Mike Fidosen. Mike, if you're there, Mike has been working on integrating manila-csi and now cinder-csi into the OpenShift distribution. Mike, can you say hi to people and look?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I'm Mike, and I'm from Shift's tech team. Our goal is to integrate OpenShift with OpenStack. And as a part of this, we have two projects. Two operators. One operator to deploy manila-csi driver and another one for Cinder. We started this journey in 4.5 OpenShift release, so about 6 months ago. And in 4.5, which is, as far as I remember, Kubernetes 1.17, we introduced manila-csi driver operator, which manages lifecycle. It deploys, manages lifecycle of the driver. But in 4.5, it was an optional component. In 4.6, we made it a first-class citizen, which means when you deploy OpenShift, you automatically get manila-csi driver deployed and configured. So all storage classes are available, all credentials are there, and you can start creating shares in Manila after the installation of OpenShift. And in 4.7, which is our next release, big release, we plan to introduce cinder-csi driver operator. on par with the entry provisioner. Yeah, if you want, I can share repositories with you to like make more clear how all this work is done. Yeah, so this is it.
Thank you, Mike. And if you would also, like I've said with the others, and you just indicated, put some notes in the Etherpad where people can get in touch with you and the operator code there. I'll just mention that for Ember, there is also a OpenShift operator, as Gorka touched on, and Christian Šveda is the main person behind that. Christian, you want to just wave to people and say hi? I'm sorry to not give you a lot of time right now, but you've been doing operator code for OpenShift as well.
Yeah, sure. Hope you can hear me as well. Yeah, my name is Christian. You might know me from former OpenStack meetings from the Swift group. Worked with Gorka for a while now on the operator, and we were successfully able to provide the operator or include the operator in the catalog. So yeah, if you have any questions on the ember-csi and operator integration, reach out to me, please.
Thanks, Christian. So we pretty much used up our 45 minutes that were allocated. As Gautam said, we'll hang out on the channel in a minute, but we're going to officially close the session for which we will record and make available. Thanks to everybody for dealing with all the technical difficulties and challenges. I think it's fair to say you can see that there's a very active and exciting activity going on around OpenStack and containers, and on a number of fronts. We've just touched the surface of this stuff, but hopefully people have some exposure to areas they hadn't known about and know who to talk to and how to carry the conversation forward. I want to thank everybody. Gautam, do you have any final words for this session?
No, just wanted to say if there's someone that wanted to let us know what your use case is to running containers on top of OpenStack and how you're doing it, especially in the scenarios that Tom described at the very top. So we want to actually be able to stratify and get the what are we targeting or the solutions that we're building around. So if you have those use cases that you can share with us, please go ahead and add them to the Etherpad. And we'll follow up with you individually probably after. And we'll certainly see you in the communication channels. Like Tom said, we hang out on IRC on Freenode. We'll put up some links on the Etherpad where we also hang out in the Kubernetes Slack. And there's a channel for cloud provider OpenStack, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks that are already familiar with that and asking questions. So feel free to join us there and we'll engage further.
Okay, thanks everyone. Gautam, you're ending now, right?
Yes, absolutely. If you would like to smile at the camera, we're going to finish recording. Thank you so much for joining and see you at the rest of the summit. Hope you enjoy it and there are less tech difficulties. Thanks.
Okay, so we're still here for a little bit. No, we don't want to obligate anybody to stay on. But if there's something you wanted to ask or say to talk with people while they're here,